miracles under the sun. Greece is said to have 1,000 islands. In fact, there are at least 3 times as many. Welcome to a journey of discovery through the islands of Greece. This part of our journey takes us to the Peloponnese, the biggest and youngest of the Greek islands. We started exploring the island from the north, beginning in Rio, travel from Arcadia to Corinth. On our way, we will stop at historically important places like Olympia. Alexis takes us on a ride with his narrow-gauge mountain railway. Passing narrow tunnels, we reach the inner part of the country via delicate bridges. In the ancient stadium of Nemea, we meet Amalia, who is preparing for an ultra-marathon to Olympia. In golden Arcadia, we meet Olga, a young beekeeper who returned to her grandfather's native village to build a future. In Corinth, bungee enthusiasts jump into the canal that made the Peloponnese an island in the first place. In the midst of the amphitheater of Epidaurus, Maria introduces us to the world of Greek drama. It is her first time on the most important stage in all of Greece. In Nafplio, we learn about the importance of the komboloi. Ralu listens to the sound of these allegedly meditative pearls. Weaving fabrics by hand, as Maria does, is an ancient handicraft in Greece. And in Leonidio, we witness Yannis building hot air balloons several meters high, which are used in the Easter Vigil by the hundreds. A few years ago, a special kind of structure started connecting the Peloponnese to the mainland, the longest cable-stayed bridge in the world. The construction was challenging. The Peloponnese and the mainland drift apart a few millimeters every year. Hence, the bridge had to be extremely flexible, particularly since it was located in a seismic zone. The pylons bearing the bridge need to withstand earthquakes and possible collisions with huge tankers. Welcome to the Peloponnese, the on and off island, which was once connected to the mainland, and then again wasn't. But we'll get back to that later. Starting in the Voraikos Gorge, a narrow-gauge mountain railway takes us all the way to the foot of the mountain in the backcountry. It is called the Odontos Railway and goes from Theokoptou to Kalavrita. It takes about 1 hour from the first stop to the last stop. Alexis Leoritas has no professional connection to this train, yet it is his train. He feels connected to the history of the Odontos. The first sound I heard when I was a toddler was the whistling of a train.
πριν 43 χρόνια ο πατέρας μου ήταν σταθμάρχης εδώ πέρα και
43 years ago, my father was a station master, and we lived on the top floor of the station building.
στον απάνω όροφο. Χαρακτηριστικό είναι κάτι που θυμάμαι και μου το
I
λέγανε οι
remember something
παππούδες,
very distinctive,
επειδή ήμουνα
something
μικρός και
even the
λίγο
elderly still
ατίθαστος,
talk
ο
about.
πατέρας μου
You
για
see,
να μπορεί να με
I was
ασφαλίσει
a
να
bit of
μην
a
έχουμε
fidgety
κάποιο
boy,
ατύχημα,
so my father tied me to a
παγκάκι που
bench
βλέπετε
with a belt,
μπροστά από το
like a dog,
σταθμό,
only to prevent accidents.
είχε βρει έναν τρόπο, μία αλυσίδα, όπως βάζεις για να
I think he was
δέσεις
afraid I
ένα
might jump on the tracks out of excitement when the train
και
arrived.
είχε περιθώριο ένα
with the
μέτρο
sound
και
of that
με έδαινε
huge
από πίσω
whistle.
στήρα στο παντελόνι για να μην μπορώ να πεταχτώ μπροστά στο σειρμό του τρένου όταν άκουγα τη σφρίχτα και από τον ενθουσιασμό μου ήθελα να το δω.
Ever since he was a little boy, Alexis has dreamed of becoming a train conductor. In his mind, the train represented the connection between his mountain village and the rest of the world. Taking 1 hour, it was the fastest way from Calavrita down to the coast, a lifeline in case of medical emergencies or for the transport of agricultural goods. Today, the Cog Railway is a tourist attraction. French engineers planned it over 100 years ago. It took 5 years to complete the technically demanding construction works, some of which could only be carried out by mountaineers. Finally, the railway had its inauguration at the end of the 19th century. Ever since, the train has commuted almost daily, regardless of the weather. The route crosses many bridges and leads through numerous tunnels, sometimes right through the mountain. Rock slips occur regularly, and the engineer always has to keep one eye on the tracks. Problems on the way are common. They are, in fact, somewhat routine. Sometimes the train has to make an unplanned stop to have rocks removed from the tracks. A few years ago, restoration works on the train tracks almost turned out to be the end of the Odontos Railway. A fire in the engine house almost destroyed the last locomotive. When I got there, the firefighters had just arrived and started to extinguish the fire. That's when I realized that there was a locomotive still in the shed. Alexis' time had come. Together with the firefighters, we broke down the door, and there was a lot of smoke. I covered my mouth and nose with a wet towel and went in. I started the engine and drove out of the burning building. Long overdue maintenance work was finished thanks to the rescue of the old locomotive. Who knows what might have become of the track? It ceased to be of economic significance a long time ago. New wagons were provided after the renovations were finished. Every now and then, huge fires rage over the Peloponnese, destroying large parts of the forest. Millions of trees are burned, trees that are needed as their roots keep the rocks together. In 2007, it was particularly dramatic. Several people died in the fires. These are sad memories for Alexis, who was part of the firefighting operations. I don't want to see any more burned soil, not even think about it.
Δεν θέλω να το σκέφτομαι, ούτε να το βλέπω αυτό, να το αντικρίζω αυτό το πράγμα.
I want everybody to have more respect for our nature.
Να έχουμε ένα σεβασμό απέναντί της.
The tracks have up to 14% incline, a challenge for the cogs, and the ride is much slower here. Quiet in favor of the pedestrians. Here, directly on the train tracks, the European long-distance walking path E4 leads from the south of Spain all the way to Cyprus. Hikers are explicitly allowed to use these tracks to walk on bridges as long as they watch out and make way for the Odontos. Initially, the train tracks were to continue all the way to Tripoli, but technological progress and the building of streets made further expensive and laborious construction unnecessary. The only natural resource on the Peloponnese that could have been somewhat profitable, ignite deposits in the mountains, turned out to be simply not worth mining.
I think that's an interesting thing.
This one piece will make 52 layers.
Watch on mobile devices or the big screen, all for free. No subscription required.
Near the last stop, Calavrita, at the foot of the mountain, is a ski resort and another spectacular sight. Plataniotissa. At an altitude of 800 meters above sea level is a very unusual chapel. A chapel embedded in the trunks of 3 massive trees entwined with each other over the course of centuries. A church inside a tree. A small table near the entrance is set up for the wishes of the visitors. Wishes are written down on small pieces of paper and stuffed in between the cracks of the walls. This way, the tree can hand them to the Virgin Mary. Up to 20 people can fit inside the small church. It is not allowed to light candles on the inside, only outside. Our journey now takes us in a southeasterly direction. Not far from here, the most important battle between the Persians and the Greeks took place over 2,500 years ago. After the Greeks had won, a messenger was sent to Athens to deliver the news of victory. He started in Marathon and allegedly dropped dead once he had finished the 40-kilometer run and delivered the message. The story of this long-distance run became legend. Ever since, sporting events have tried to find out who is the fastest runner, but usually the distances are far less than 40 kilometers. Some of these competitions took place in Nemea. Beneath the Temple of Zeus is one of the oldest stadiums in the country. In ancient times, the Nemean Games were held here. Categories included boxing, javelin throwing, chariot racing, and of course, running. Those events offered much excitement back then. Runners responsible for a false start were whipped, and sometimes the athletes had to flee from a raging mob in the arena's catacombs. This is where they scribbled on the walls, unaware that at that moment they had become immortal. Today, Amalia Mateo trains here. She is preparing for a very special kind of competition, the ultra marathon, leading across the Peloponnese all the way to Olympia.
2 years ago, I did it in 26.5 hours, but I was really physically fit, and I didn't run on asphalt. Now, 2 years later, I'm in even better condition. Now I hope to come in at under 25 hours.
Amalia aims high, running 180 kilometers without any kind of a break. True, the landscape is gorgeous, but running for more than 24 hours straight? She pushes herself during training, and she has a lot of experience.
I've been running since I was born. I've tried other sports, but running won out in the end. Freedom is to run in the great outdoors, listening only to your own body.
Amalia knows how tough the competition is going to be and prepares herself for all kinds of exertions.
Muscle pains are a big problem, but stomach cramps are bad too. At big meets, most top runners have stomach trouble.
Finally, the big day has arrived. 180 contestants from all over the world are here to compete and win the ultra marathon. A warm welcome. Vaseline between the toes. Final preparations. Her friend Jota is Amalia's mentor. She encourages her not only to complete the challenge, but also to do it as one of the best. The race starts unspectacularly. The first few seconds are unimportant in a 24-hour race. All runners face 180 kilometers and 3,800 meters altitude difference without a break.
The most important thing in a big competition is to run with your soul. No matter how physically fit you are, if your mindset isn't right and your heart has no life force, it's hard to keep going. Your body is quickly worn out. It hurts, you suffer. Then you rely on head and heart to keep running. You need to be trained to overcome physical pain with the mind.
At the beginning of the race, all contestants run closely together. Only in the course of the afternoon does each find his own speed and rhythm and master the 180 kilometers with very short breaks. In addition to the distance, the athletes have to face changing weather and the great temperature fluctuations between day and night. At the 33-kilometer checkpoint, most runners arrive one at a time and have their first break, after approximately 3 hours. But where is Amalia? It's a special day in the mountain village. The Café Neon has been transformed into a place for spectators. All contestants appear to be still in the competition. Amalia, wearing bib number 126, only changes her shoes, gets some provisions and information before she is off again.
In a competition, you usually aren't just running for yourself, but for the many people who are close to you and support you, before the contest and your whole life long. Reaching the finish line is a reward for all of them, too.
Amalia still has to run through the night, which is going to be cold and strenuous. Exhaustion and fatigue will set in. Hopefully, she will still be able to appreciate the beautiful landscape. Not too far away lies Arcadia, close to the route the runners take. Ovid and Virgil praised this beautiful landscape a long time ago, but it wasn't until Goethe and other German romantics, dreaming of faraway countries, traveled the Mediterranean Sea and procured Arcadia's reputation as a paradise on earth. Olga Palavido and Charismantis live here with their bee colonies in awareness of their paradise. According to them, Arcadia's clean air, an environment free of exhaust fumes and pesticides, provide ideal living conditions for bees.
You can't keep bees without loving them. You have to treat them like your own children.
Olga and Charis lived in Athens before moving to the Peloponnese. Now they live in the village of her ancestors. She was a retail saleswoman, but lost her job due to the economic crisis, while Charis worked in the tourist industry. Today, they are beekeepers.
Here, we can see the pollen, which is the protein for the beehive. So, as long as there's pollen, the hive grows. The queen bee continues to reproduce. And honey production goes from strength to strength.
In short, pollen is like steak for the beehive. That is what they feed on to make royal jelly.
Δηλαδή από αυτό τρώει και με αυτό τρώει δηλαδή. Με αυτό παράγει και το βασιλικό πολτό, με τη γύρι τον παράγει το βασιλικό πολτό. Δηλαδή έχει πολλές ιδιότητες.
Royal jelly, or propolis, and pollen. The keepers get several different valuable goods from the bees besides honey. In Arcadia, bees find a lot of pollen. They collect it and bring it back to the hive. The expression "as busy as a bee" did not come about by chance. Pollen is collected using fine-meshed grids at the entrance to the beehive. This way, Olga and Charis can collect it more easily after leaving enough for the bees. Packaged, it is the ideal energy source for athletes.
You have to respect the bees and move gently so you don't provoke them to sting. A bee sting does hurt. The less you aggravate them, the better. You must not kill a single bee. When we control the beehives, we try to make sure we don't hurt a single one. That way they stay calm and you can work with them. In fact, we always work with the bees. We respect them. Otherwise, they'll sting us silly.
Αλλιώς θα μας κάνουνε μαύρους από τα τσιμπήματα.
Olga and Charis cannot live off their honey, yet. Both are confident, however, that someday word of the quality of Arcadian honey will spread.
Και είναι και επιλογή είναι στάση ζωής. Για μένα, δηλαδή είναι στάση ζωής.
It's an attitude to life to be here. I only eat good food. Whether I buy yogurt, milk, meat, or eggs from my neighbors and friends, I know what I eat and what quality it needs to have. Purity. Money is not the most important thing, but the way you live, what quality of life you have. Most people wait until retirement before moving to the countryside. I most certainly won't get a pension, so why not move here now? Next stop, the coast. We are close to the coastline, a place where the Greeks have vehemently tampered with nature, defining the Peloponnese as something it had once been a long time ago, an island. Experts still quarrel about the question whether the Peloponnese is an island or not. Corinth. An artificial waterway separates the Peloponnese from the mainland, thus saving ships from a huge detour on their way to Athens. After all, 11,000 ships use this shortcut every year. But the canal is also a hot spot for adrenaline junkies. It's a 70-meter drop for the daredevils. Bungee jumpers use this relatively new canal to get their kicks. In the 6th century BC, Corinthians already had plans to bypass the 230 nautical miles it took to ship around Cape Malias. Commerce would benefit immensely from a shortcut between the Gulf of Corinth and the Saronic Gulf. For a long time, small ships were dragged overland on a paved path, whose remains can still be seen west of the canal entrance. Infamous Emperor Nero was the first who ordered the 6-kilometer-long canal to be excavated, but he never finished his endeavor. It wasn't until 1881 that the excavation process was continued.
Like a professional.
Yes. Είδας να πω, εντάξει. Πολύ ωραίο.
Bulk carriers, however, have no other choice but to sail around the Peloponnese and refrain from using the narrow canal. Starting in Rio, we travel over the high plateau of Corinth, heading towards Epidaurus, into the heart of the country. Here is the most famous theater in the world, embedded into the countryside.
O sacred light, and O thou ambient air, how have ye witnessed to my constant sorrows? How have ye seen these hands in rage of grief harrow and bruise my swollen and bleeding bosom, while each new morn has blasted with my woe? How have the circling nights heard my despair? How have my walls and hated bed been cursed, and echoed to my still repeated anguish? My sighs, my groans for my unhappy fire, whom barbarous climes and cruel battles sparred, but whom my mother flew, she and her partner of adulterous joys, accursed Aegisthus, with a murdering axe.
Του σκίσαν το κεφάλι με πελέκι όπως μια ανδρή ή δασοκόπη.
Maria Malachou enters the stage as Electra, starring in the eponymous drama by Sophocles, which is 2,500 years old. Electra is mourning the death of her father, who was murdered by her mother and lover, a tragedy performed regularly in Epidaurus. It is Maria's first time on this stage, a stage meaning the world for every Greek actor worth his or her salt. Performing in Epidaurus is most likely the highest honor a stage actor can receive.
It's thrilling. It is a mixture of feelings. It's fear, it's thrilling, it's enthusiasm, it's terrifying. It's a complex of very different emotions that I have during I'm on stage. Yes.
Epidaurus has seats for up to 14,000 people and a spectacular view from the top, if the theater performance is boring. Greek theaters were famous for their excellent acoustics. Even in the last row, audiences could hear the actor's voice clearly. Only men were allowed to perform here, first as part of the choir, and later also as solo actors. Visiting a theater was mandatory for every male Greek citizen, even if the performances were very demanding.
They began from very early hours in the morning, and they finished in the night. It was a feast.
Most visitors came here for health reasons. Here they could find a healing temple, the famous Asclepion. It was famous for balancing body and soul, creating equilibrium between the two. Medical achievements led to a reputation that brought money and helped to finance the theater. And this theater aimed to heal not only the mind, but society also.
Political education, social education, law education. It was like a church of the community where philosophers went and they had ideas coming along so as to solve some social and political problems.
If you take a closer look, you will find that this stage gave birth to one of the most influential ideas the world has ever seen. In a dialogue between the people, actors and philosophers, the revolutionary idea of democracy was born 2,500 years ago. Approximately 30 kilometers further south is Nafplio. The city of 32,000 inhabitants was once the capital of Greece. This place has a certain atmosphere to it, deriving from the various cultures once ruling this area. One can find traces of Ottoman rulership, Venetian architecture, as well as Bavarian relics. Similar to other Greek islands, it is primarily men that visit a kafenion. Men reading the paper, talking, drinking coffee, or playing with their komboloi. Nafplio is considered to be the birthplace of this game. Originally meant as a protest against the prayer ropes of the occupying Muslims, it gained popularity far beyond the borders of Nafplio. When played with, it makes a sound. It sings, as the professionals say. Music of free souls. Very quiet, but unmistakable. Ralu Gromitsari is an expert when it comes to komboloi. Her shop offers art treasures from different centuries. Choosing the right one is difficult. She knows how important the sound is when purchasing a komboloi.
The sound is very important. It keeps us company. If you don't like its song, it's not the right komboloi for you, regardless of the material. They say that amber has the most beautiful sound.
Strings of pearls can be found all over the world. Ralu has visited many countries, compiling a huge collection and gaining a lot of experience in the process. In the beginning, these chainlets were made out of pits or genuine pearls. Later, also out of amber, coral, horn, fine wood, silver, or ivory. Most crucial for this selection was not how the material looked, but how it sounded. Quite unlike their predecessors, the prayer ropes.
These are prayer beads, which make no sound because the spaces between the beads are very small. The thumb just barely fits between them to count prayers.
These prayer ropes have been around since Hindu nomads introduced them in the 5th century BC. They are known in Buddhism as well as in Islam. Crusaders brought them home from the Orient. This is how rosaries came about. But all of these chainlets were primarily used to count prayers and not to make a sound.
The komboloi is different. It's this here. There is enough space between for the beads to move, so they make a sound. But this has nothing to do with God.
Ralu is considered an expert in repairing old kombolois. She knows how to find a functionally adequate surrogate for a broken pearl. Adequate in sound and looks. A repair is never finished without a last sound check.
It's about the human being and the need to communicate with oneself, to process things. When you're worried about something, you drink your coffee and play with your komboloi. You play some music to calm yourself down, and life goes on.
In the Nafplio harbor lies the Botsi Fortress, the town's landmark. It was built for the protection of the harbor. A large chain was stretched between the fortress and the harbor walls so hostile ships could not enter. Later, the fortress became home to the local hangman. The best view on the Bozzi is from the walls of the castle, where Maria Gonido advertises her handcrafted fabrics. Maria has a studio in the old part of town and only works with fabrics she has crafted herself. For the coloring of the wool and yarn, she only works with materials already used by her ancestors: leaves, tree bark, blossoms, or onion skins. Once colored, it gets very quiet in her workshop. The only thing that can be heard is her weaving loom.
There's a tranquility here that helps you to concentrate and to weave. I find that interesting.
It almost seems like Maria isn't weaving but meditating. This is when she is at her most creative.
That's what's so fascinating about working with a loom. You're at your leisure to create a weaving pattern, to find your own rhythm. And this whole procedure determines the result, the pattern and the quality of the fabric. And all of that is going on while you're weaving.
Maria moved here from Athens. Nafplio simply fascinated her. Particularly, the colors have always inspired her.
There's the bright blue of the sky and the sea, many gradations of green, fuchsia, and the red of the beautiful bougainvillea we have in the city, the colors of the fortress, and some of the houses. All colors also found in my work. Color interests me, because my work is actually a play with colors. The city itself is a play of colors.
230 meters above the city is the castle that can only be reached via 999 steps. It is relatively young when compared to other historic landmarks on the Peloponnese, having been built in the 17th century by the Venetians. Our journey takes us even further south. So far, we have already been to Epidaurus and Nafplio. Soon, we will reach Leonidio and finally Olympia, before ending in Mani. We arrive at Leonidio shortly before Easter. Houses in the city are decorated with mysterious little bags. This is Yanis Machiras. He makes hot air balloons of all sizes using thin fabrics. Some balloons are as long as 2 meters, and Yanis has been doing this for as long as he can remember. Some time ago, branches were burned in Leonidio to symbolize Judas's incineration and resurrection. When I was 8, shortly after the war, I saw a foreign person lighting up 5 balloons that flew away afterwards. And since I was young and curious, I was interested in it, and what they're made of and how they work exactly. Even when he was a little boy, Yannis understood that fire was the best way to heat up air. Flames created by scraps of cloth soaked in oil. The hot air is much lighter than the air on the ground, thereby lifting the balloons. Fashioning the balloons is a result of years of trial and error. Back then, a balloon was glued together using dough from yeast. That was all we had. The years passed, and slowly I developed the process further. Balloons got bigger, and every church had their own. Back then, there were 1, 2, 4, 5 churches. And everyone wanted a balloon, a glowing ball of light flying towards the Lord's resurrection in the night before Easter Sunday. A life's task for Yannis Machiras, especially since there were technical challenges to master. We didn't want them to fly too far away. It could be dangerous for one of our many fruit and vegetable gardens. And many gardeners were on the lookout with a shotgun to shoot down the balloons and protect their greenhouses. Finally, the time has come. The day has arrived on which Yannis' balloons are put to the test. His work over the last few months. It is Easter night on the Peloponnese. At first, test flights in the dusk help to determine the direction of the wind. It depends on the wind. More than once I've seen the wind coming from below, and when the balloon was up in the air, it just vanished. Nothing could be seen anymore. The start takes place late at night under a pitch-black sky. The moment has come when everybody's joy is all Yannis needs to feel happy and appreciated. On the road again, right across the Peloponnese, just before we arrive at Olympia. What has happened to Amalia? Could she hang on? Several runners gave up during the night, but a friendly and warm sun welcomes those who prevailed. Amalia is one who did, after she survived hitting rock bottom. Now, it's only but a few kilometers to Olympia, maybe just 1 hour. Right here, at the Temple of Zeus, athletes have been competing since 776 BC. The tradition of the Olympic Games, which took place for over 1,000 years, was traditionally a time of peace. Amalia is nearing the finishing line. And once again, she is experiencing how much she enjoys running, even if it has been for 24 hours straight.
Running has helped me conquer many things, diseases, problems. It helps me overall to clear my head.
After 23 hours and 58 minutes, she has finally made it. Amalia is the first woman to reach the finish line. With a smile on her face, 13th place overall. Amalia, what's next for you?
I'll run the Olympus Marathon next.
I mean right now.
I'll do one more round and then I'll put my legs up under the olive tree over there. And then start all over again. My legs just keep on running now.
After 180 kilometers in less than 24 hours, nothing can intimidate Amalia anymore. Not even the track in the stadium of Olympia, which is especially large since Hercules himself used his enormous steps as the measurement. From the stadium, we go south yet again. Our route crosses thinly populated areas, passes a deserted massif, and reaches Peloponnese's middle finger called Mani. For our goodbye, we visit a scruffy landscape, villages with residential towers used as a shelter for regional families who sought refuge there when confronted with a bloody feud. For today, our journey over the Peloponnese has ended, and we travel south over the open sea.